Hi everyone, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about, are you really financially behind? One of the hardest parts about being in your 20s in this day and age is that in the past, you would compare yourself to your local community, people you actually knew, like your friends, your family, your neighbors. But nowadays, we're comparing ourselves to what's online. A lot of us are spending 4, 5, sometimes even 10 hours a day on social media, scrolling through perfectly curated feeds and comparing ourselves to the extremes of social media. And when I say extremes, it's true. Social media really highlights the extremes. It highlights the most beautiful, the luckiest, the most privileged, the richest people. And on top of that, even if you feel like you really know a creator, you don't really know a creator, if I'm keeping it real. You don't really know the full details of what's happening in a creator's life. You don't know the privileges they have. Sometimes creators are even lying to their audience. And you don't have an understanding of the full story of why someone is where they are. And if they are really where they are. In this video, I'm going to kind of myth bust a few really common social media trends that are very common online but are very rare in real life, using the data and facts to show you that you are probably not as far behind as you think you are. You're probably not even behind. When you're watching these people, you might feel like you're behind or that you're a loser. Or worse, you might be trying to get quick results without consideration that time really does make a huge difference in your financial journey. And before anyone comes into the comments saying, but I'm not average, the video isn't about if you're average or if you're not average. It's to just give you a little bit of a reality check about what is actually normal and what is the norm, because sometimes our understanding of the norm is distorted with social media. Let's talk about the myth of being a millionaire in your 20s. YouTube is my primary platform that I watch videos on, and I can't tell you how common it is to see very young 20-something-year-old millionaires with flashy cars, flashy houses, insane incomes. But if we're being really honest, being a millionaire in your 20s is extremely rare. Less than 1% of people in their 20s are millionaires in the US. And a lot of these online millionaires, some of them did get their money through very ethical means. But if we're keeping it real, some of them are scammers. Some of them got their money through unethical means. Like I mentioned before, only 1% of people in their 20s are actually millionaires, and that the average millionaire is 62 years old. Yeah, grandma and grandpa. Most of their wealth is in their retirement accounts and home equity. And surprisingly, a lot of them built their wealth not through business ownership. Only 17% of millionaires became millionaires through business ownership. This is really important to know because, as you can see, it takes time to be wealthy. It takes time to build wealth. And once you understand that time actually is a huge factor in building wealth, you are so much more compassionate and patient with yourself when it comes to your own wealth building journey. But most importantly, you're less likely to make dumb decisions because you're trying to get rich quick. You're so much less likely to be able to spot BS on a get rich quick scheme, and you're going to be focused on smart, steady financial decisions that will help you build wealth. The second common social media myth is buying a home in your 20s. I'm here to say that I do know some people who have bought homes in their 20s very legitimately. They made smart decisions, so I'm not saying that it's impossible. What I'm saying is that it's actually not the norm. But on social media, you would think that it was very normal to be a homeowner in your 20s. And the truth is, a lot of social media influencers, even people who I know that own homes, I live in a major city, so owning a home in New York City is a huge achievement. A lot of people are able to afford homes because of family money, and sometimes they just really are great at managing their money. But what the data shows is that being a homeowner in your 20s is rare. Only 7% of home buyers are under the age of 30, and the median age of a first-time home buyer is 36 years old. And especially if you're in a city like New York City, if you're buying a home, you're someone who already has a 6-figure salary that you've had for a very long time. Sometimes you're putting less than the recommended 20% down. Sometimes you're getting family help. And that's something a lot of people are sometimes embarrassed to share, but it's the reality of how a lot of people own homes in expensive real estate markets like New York City. But if you believe that you're supposed to own a home in your 20s, sometimes you might feel ashamed that you're renting. There's no shame in renting. And if you've watched some of my video content, I really believe that renting can sometimes be a very smart financial decision. I think rushing into homeownership might also make you kind of overextend yourself by purchasing a home that you might not be able to actually afford to just become a homeowner. It might also have you ignore some of the hidden costs of being a home buyer, like the maintenance, the taxes, the cost of repairs. There's so much that goes into being a homeowner that sometimes isn't always showcased on social media. Just like I said before, buying a home is possible in your 20s, but it's okay if you don't have a home, because the average age of a home buyer in the US is 36 years old. If you're below 36, you're probably doing just fine. The third common stereotype of social media is that you have to be a successful entrepreneur in your 20s. The media and social media love young, successful entrepreneurs. That's why we have things like Forbes 30 under 30. Being a successful entrepreneur in your 20s is rare. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Listen, I have tried a lot of entrepreneurial ventures in my 20s, and I don't regret trying those entrepreneurial ventures because they've taught me a lot. But it's comforting to know that the average age of a successful entrepreneur is around 45 years old. Because like a lot of good things in life, it takes time to develop the skills it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, to develop the knowledge it takes to become a successful entrepreneur, and to develop the network it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. And if someone is a young entrepreneur, sometimes there can be important information missing. Are they coming from a background where they have access to inherited wealth? They have access to other entrepreneurs in their family, that have given them the knowledge to be a successful entrepreneur now. There's so much missing context and information that it's important to really understand that it's okay to take your time on your entrepreneurial journey, and it's okay for it to take time. And I think that also believing that you have to be a successful entrepreneur in your 20s will sometimes lead you to make bad decisions. Like, look at how many of the Forbes 30 under 30 are scammers. Sometimes the rush to be successful quickly might have you making very short-sighted decisions because you're not looking over the long-term horizon. And you might find yourself in the rush to become a successful entrepreneur before 30. You might find yourself neglecting the skills that take time to build for real success. Like all good things in life, some things will take time, and it's okay for things to take time. That doesn't mean you can't try to become a successful entrepreneur in your 20s, but it just means that you can give yourself a little bit of grace and you can take your time. Before I move on to the next point, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, Offline, which is actually the app I built, and I use it every single day to help me reclaim my focus. A lot of us are in a toxic loop of work, sleep, scroll, work, sleep, scroll. It's time to really break that cycle and really embrace a life offline. With the Offline app, you can block your most distracting apps, you can create customizable routines to regain focus, and finally, you can track your screen time usage and really just gain insights into your digital habits. You will find the link in the description box down below, and you can get a free week to try it before you buy it. Now let's move on to the next point. The fourth thing actually really surprised me, which is that being debt-free in your 20s is very rare. On social media, at least, we don't really always know what people's background is, but being debt-free seems like it's kind of the understood energy on social media, right? Maybe it's just me, but I feel like being debt-free seems more common on social media than it is in reality. For example, I am debt-free, but the reason I'm debt-free is mostly because of financial aid from college and family help. Family help being a huge one. Without these two things, I would not be debt-free in my 20s. And sometimes creators might not always share why they are debt-free in their 20s. Like, did they have family help? Did they get the privilege of living rent-free so they could pay towards their debt? Sometimes they just have really earned a high salary throughout, so that's how they're able to pay off their debt. But what the number shows is that it's actually very common to have debt in your 20s, especially in the US, where you have to pay a high amount for your education. This is the average debt of someone below the age of 25. This is the average age of someone from 26 to 35. The average federal student loan debt is $37,000 per borrower. This shows two things. First of all, education in the US is too expensive, which I agree, and that being debt-free is actually not the norm. But when people believe it's the norm, I feel like it actually makes them feel very ashamed and alone, because you feel like, wow, no one else has debt, it's just me that has debt, when in reality, most people in their 20s have debt, especially if you've gone to college. I will say though that being debt-free obviously is the goal, but in your 20s, with the understanding of how expensive college is and how beneficial college is, I will say that being debt-free in your 20s is not normal. Give yourself some grace. Continue on your debt-free journey with the understanding that actually most people in their 20s have debt too. Now, the final thing is traveling multiple times a year. So I'm guilty of this too, but the reason I'm able to do this is because of a lot of privilege, because of good luck of getting into the tech industry and making enough money, and also because every single trip I take, usually I'm splitting the expenses with my partner or my friends or my family. I always have someone I'm traveling with, which helps me bring down the cost of the travel. But yeah, social media influencers, and I'm guilty of this one, make it seem very normal to take multiple luxury international vacations every year. This is really not normal. You're not always privy to how influencers are funding their trips. Maybe they're, doing what I'm doing, which is they're splitting their vacations with others, or they're finding ways like credit card hacking, finding different financial tools to bring down the cost of travel. Sometimes they might be going into debt to fund these vacations. Sometimes they're using their family's money to take these nice vacations. Other times they could be sponsored to take these vacations. Like someone is paying for their hotel, or someone's paying for their flight, or someone's paying for everything for them to go on these lavish vacations. What's interesting is when I was researching on this topic, I found that actually 51% of Americans actually have passports, which means a little less than half the country does not have a passport, which was really eye-opening for me and shows really how much of a privilege and blessing it is to be able to go abroad and travel. Traveling multiple times a year is very rare. Even traveling once a year seems to be kind of rare from what I found. So long story short, traveling internationally many times a year is not normal, and believing that you need to keep up with influencers and do a European summer and an African winter and an Asian fall, like feeling like you have to do all those things, will lead you to overspend. Don't fall into this trend. Put your long-term financial goals first, and then your short-term goals of traveling next. As you can see, social media is a lie. It's not reality. Influencers lie. Sometimes you don't have an understanding of the full story, the privileges that allow them to make certain decisions that seem financially crazy to us, normal people. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is a very new style of video for me. If you like this video, please make sure to tap that like button and tap that subscribe button, and let me know what you thought about this new style of video content, and I will see you guys in the next video.